The gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Timmons, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Yellen, thank you for being here today. You and I have disagreed on the best approach to address a number of challenges facing this country. I'm going to briefly highlight two areas where your policy proposals ultimately were quite simply deemed bad for the American people, but then I'm going to end on an area where I think we're going to find agreement. First, you spent much of 2021 saying that inflation was transitory and likely to abate once COVID-specific factors subsided. These talking points were then parroted by various officials in the administration and Congress to justify trillions more in additional spending. All the while, Larry Summers, President Clinton's Treasury Secretary and Director of President Obama's National Economic Council, aggressively warned against such spending, warning it would further exacerbate inflation. Then a year ago, almost to the day, you were quoted saying that you failed to anticipate how long elevated inflation would continue to plague American consumers. Finally, on June 7th of this year, you said that you expected inflation to subside over the next 2 years. So simply put, you got it wrong in a number of places, and that error in judgment caused immense damage to the American people. It caused the cost of goods to soar, salaries to be reduced in relative value. It denied the American dream of home ownership, just overall hardship in general. And so I just want to point out policies coming out of Washington have very serious consequences, and it seems policymakers often forget that. Second, I want to go, 18 months ago, we had a back and forth, somewhat heated, where I criticized your proposal to collect Americans' bank account balances. I said it was not a serious policy proposal and only designed as a way to let Democrats justify spending more money we don't have. The Senate wisely sidelined this proposal, and the American people are better off because of it. Again, policies coming out of Washington have consequences, and we must be thoughtful in our policy proposals and actions. They do have real consequences for the American people. Now, on to an area I think we're going to agree. And I was pleasantly surprised that my colleague across the aisle, Mr. Gonzalez, just brought it up. And I'm going to just pose a question to you. It's fairly simple. Do you agree that it is important for the dollar to remain the global reserve currency? Is that a priority of yours?
Yes, I think it is important for the dollar to be the world's reserve currency.
I agree with you. Thank you. I guess maybe could you just highlight why you feel that way? What are the factors that go into that policy decision of yours?
Well, as the safest and most sought-after asset, the dollar as a reserve currency means that our interest rates are the lowest of really any borrower around the globe, and it lowers our cost and
makes it easier to trade. It makes it easier to compete in the global economy. It builds our allies abroad. If you agree that it is important to push this policy forward and to maintain the dollar as a global reserve currency, I guess why has President Biden nominated Jared Bernstein to be the chairman of the Economic Council of Advisors? He is on record in numerous op-eds stating that we should actively take steps to remove the dollar as a global reserve currency. It's a burden and not a privilege, and we should end the dollar as the global reserve currency. Why would President Biden, who I'm assuming you work very closely on these issues with, place someone in such a position of trust and authority that disagrees with his own Treasury Secretary?
I'm not going to speak to Jared Bernstein's views on this particular issue.
Well, your views are diametrically opposed, and he disagrees with you. And so I guess just please make sure that you continue to push to maintain the dollar as a global reserve currency. I guess let's go back to debt. Debt to GDP ratio in April was 119%. I have serious concerns about our spending, our unsustainable spending, and that it will further erode our ability to maintain the dollar as a global reserve currency. We saw that Greece, at 180% debt to GDP, went into austerity measures and had to get the EU to bail them out. Madam Secretary, nobody's going to bail us out. The American people are not able to. So what do you think about our unsustainable spending, and is our debt to GDP ratio a concern of yours as it relates to maintaining the dollar as the reserve currency?
It's critical that we remain on a fiscally sustainable course. And there are different...
Did you say remain? We are not on a fiscally or sustainable course, Madam Secretary.
Well, the president presented a budget with $3 trillion of deficit reduction over the next decade, and what I regard as the most important metric of
That's shooting a
sustainability.
bullet at a
Gentleman's
freight
time
train.
has expired.